This is a topic that I've talked about previously in an older video, but I deleted that video just because, well, I didn't delete it, but I privated most of my old videos just because I wanted to start fresh, and also, you could see my face in all the videos, and I kind of decided that I don't really want my face all over the internet right now, just because, for privacy. So, that's when I decided to hide behind a mascot, which is the anime girl that you see in all the thumbnails and as my channel icon. I haven't come up with a name for her yet, but somebody, we should all 12 of you, we should all come up with a name. But today I wanted to talk about again, the thing that I've struggled with for a long time, ever since I was in middle school. I think I can remember feeling this way, is struggling with touch starvation. I distinctly remember there was this one day when I was 11 or 12, and I was at a school dance, and I remember my friend, I was talking to my friend, and I was kind of talking about how I was having a hard time with something that I can't remember, and she gave me a hug. And that was like the first time that, at least in my adolescence, that a girl that I liked gave me a hug. And I remember it kind of blew my mind a little bit. Like, my mind just was blown apart, because this girl gave me a hug, and I was like, that can happen? I was just so taken aback. It was just like, I didn't know, I didn't know that was possible. And I remember immediately after that, like, ever since that moment, I just needed it. I needed it again. I needed it more. And not in like a weird way, just in like a, oh my gosh, I suddenly realized that I have this need, and I need this need to be met. And ever since that day, I kind of, I went into high school, and I finished middle school, went to high school, and I was basically, as a teenager, I was constantly asking for hugs. I always wanted hugs from people. And I would always be, kind of going up to my friends and giving them hugs and stuff, and patting them on the shoulder and stuff like that. And but I always had this kind of need that could never really truly be kind of met, because every time I would receive a hug or give a hug, it always kind of felt like, right after, I would immediately go back to needing hugs. And I didn't really know how to handle that as a teenager. I didn't know what to do with that at the time. So I just kept asking for hugs and giving hugs. And little did I know at the time, because I was a, naive, inexperienced, neurodivergent teenager, people don't generally like to be touched, and it makes people uncomfortable for somebody to constantly ask them for hugs and want to be touched and all that, and a lot of people thought it was weird and didn't like that. And so I also struggled with loneliness. And I mean, I was already struggling with loneliness before. I think that's actually kind of part of the touch starvation. I think the touch starvation comes from being lonely. Um, but I, was struggling with feeling misunderstood and feeling alone. Most of my high school experience was really a struggle because I had a hard time making friends, and I also got bullied quite a bit, and I struggled to talk to people, and I really wanted to have friends, and I really wanted to be friends with people, but it always felt like people didn't want to be friends with me. Um, and sometimes I still kind of get in moods where I feel that way. Uh, I don't whether or not that's really true. I'm not sure, but when I was in high school, at least, I always felt sort of this feeling of being misunderstood, being perceived as having bad intentions. But I never had bad intentions. I see, I was, I was a well-meaning, unintentional creep when I was in high school. I was well-meaning, but I didn't realize that I was making people uncomfortable. So people just wouldn't want to be around me, and I didn't know why. And I would be like, why doesn't anybody want to hang out with me? Why doesn't anybody want to be friends with me? Those were questions that I asked myself over and over and over again when I was in high school. Um, and I don't know, high school was really hard for me, and I never want to go back to high school. It sucks. Everything sucks in high school, and I will never understand people who tell me that they loved high school or that they had a great high school experience. High school for me was awful. It was probably one of the worst times of my entire life so far. Because I have a lot of life to live because I'm very young, but at this point in my life, high school was like the worst time to be alive. Especially and also middle school. So we moved around a lot when I was growing up. So when I was in middle school, I started middle school in 6th grade, and the school that I went to was supposed to be 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then, but then when we moved, I was in a new school district, and the school district was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So I actually took 4 years of middle school. I was in middle school longer than I was in high school. So most of my adolescence was actually spent in middle school. So I kind of combined that with high school in my mind. They're kind of pretty much the same time period to me. Kind of the same experience. And being in middle school for 4 years really sucked. that was a really, I mean, middle school is also, already the worst time to be alive. I mean, I already said that high school is the worst time to be alive, but I take that back. Middle school is the worst time to be alive as a human being. And then second to that is high school, but so I really struggled with making friends throughout middle school and high school, and I really struggled with loneliness, and I also was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, specifically social anxiety, um, which I still struggle with, but to a much lesser extent now than I did when I was younger. Um, so, I mean, I was on medication, which helped a lot, but there's only so much that medication can do. Um, it can't really fix the situation that you're in, which, I mean, I wasn't in like any like serious situations, like I wasn't being abused or anything, but I was definitely being bullied a lot. I remember there were people that I felt like were my friends who sometimes did really shitty things to me and made me feel really bad. And I often felt kind of left out or ignored most of the time. I got ignored a lot. I think that's a big thing. I remember distinctly in high school, especially because I did musical theater, and theater kids are like the worst. I remember in high school, I would say things and make jokes and stuff and try to fit in, but people would just ignore me and just kind of pretend that I wasn't there. And whenever I'd say something, people would just not respond and just pretend that like they didn't hear anything, which really sucks. That's a really crappy form of bullying because then you just feel really insignificant and like nobody cares about you. And I remember I'd always find out that people in my quote unquote friend group would all be doing something like all of them would go out and do something, and I only ever found out like after the fact. I never got really invited to anything. You know, Even people who I, wanted to be my friends, they wouldn't invite me to stuff. They would always be hanging out and stuff, but I never got invited. I never got, well, okay, I was about to say I never got asked out to like any dances, which isn't true. I did get asked out once. Um, but then at the dance, like everything went wrong, and there was one friend who was kind of trying to sabotage everything for some reason, and then I got blamed for it, and that was a whole thing. So yeah, so I just had a really, really not fun high school experience. I also had people, like, uh, there was one time when I was upset about something with someone, and you know, we we met up in person, and I was in the car with them, and for some reason, they were just really insistent about being in the car, and I was like, okay, that's weird. Um, but I was just like bearing my soul to them a little bit. That's an overstatement. I was being genuine with them, and I was talking about why I was mad. And then later I found out, because I found on their Instagram, they had posted like a video that was like, oh, 2020 was the best year ever, and in part of the video, was I saw recorded from the back of the car. I saw my head, like the back of my head, because I was in the front seat next to this person, and then the camera kind of came back and their friends were in the trunk or in the back or something, like hiding, and they were laughing at me and making fun of me, and that really hurt. that stung. So yeah, and then around senior year, I got into a bad relationship with someone, and they were really abusive towards me, and they called me stupid, and they called me dumb, and they yelled at me all the time, and and they just didn't treat me very well, and that was really traumatizing. So yeah, so that's all to say that I was really lonely for most of high school. And, now that I'm in college, I'm still, sometimes, I still sometimes get lonely, though I've gotten a lot better at managing my emotions and such, and I understand, boundaries and social cues now, and I understand how to talk to people, and I understand what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And now I've learned to really respect people's boundaries. That's a big thing for me now. Is like, if somebody's not comfortable with something, I'm absolutely not going to force them to do anything. Um, you know, so if I ask somebody, hey, do you want to hang out with me? And they're like, no thanks. Then I'm like, okay, that's fine. I don't force anybody to do anything. If somebody doesn't want to hang out with me, that's fine. They don't have to hang out with me. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to feel a little bit saddened that yet another person doesn't want to hang out with me. But I respect it, and I don't, again, I don't force anybody to do anything. That's a lesson that took me a while to learn, but now that I've learned it, people are a lot more willing to be around me, which is good, because I want people to feel comfortable around me, and I want people to feel safe around me, and I don't like making people feel uncomfortable, and I don't like hurting people, and I don't like making people feel sad, or I don't like hurting people's feelings, because I care about people a lot. I care about making people feel good, and I want people to be happy, and I want people to feel good around me, But anyway, so part of, respecting people's boundaries is also realizing that, a lot of the things that I want to do, or a lot of the needs that I need met, aren't going to happen most of the time. So that means that I'm still really touch-starved because, I almost never ask people for hugs anymore. Pretty much never, actually, because I'm still traumatized from high school, and I'm still traumatized from myself. I'm still traumatized from being that creepy guy. And I don't like that, and I don't want to be the creepy guy. I don't want to make people uncomfortable, and I'm traumatized from making people uncomfortable, so I don't ever ask for hugs anymore. But even if I do, if somebody's kind of, like, confiding in me, because I actually have quite a lot of people who will just, like, even strangers will just come up to me and just start talking to me about all their problems. And I think part of it is because I'm a good listener, and also I'm a friendly person, and I smile at people, and I think people just feel safe around me, which is good because that's the goal. But yeah, I've literally been at the train station and had strangers just walk up to me and then just start telling me all their problems and stuff. I can't remember where I was going with this. Because, so anyway, I'll have people confide in me, and, sometimes I'll be like, oh, like, that sounds really hard, do you need a hug? And most of the time they say no, which is fine, and I respect it, and so I don't do anything about it, I just like, okay. But then I still feel like, I still have this really bad touch starvation that I just cannot get met. I just cannot get the need met. You know, it helps when I'm in a relationship, because, you know, I've been in two relationships, and the second one was um, a lot better than the first one. So for a while, I was feeling actually pretty okay because, you know, I was getting those needs met because I was in a relationship. But then we broke up, and so now I'm back to. I very quickly came back to feeling really lonely and needing to be held. And see, and that's the thing, and it's not out of a place, like a weird place. It's not out of anything, you know, sexual or out of anything like remotely perverted or anything. It's genuinely just like, I just need to be held. I just need somebody to hold me, and I need to be comforted, you know, because physical touch is my love language. It's how I feel okay, it's how I feel safe, it's how I feel loved. It just really helps me feel just comforted. But you know, the like love language of physical touch makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially because I'm a dude. So a lot of times I have trouble finding people who are willing to hug me. Which, you know, is fine, but it's what, you know, it still is a struggle. So yeah, it's really hard actually to describe to people what my particular situation like feels like, because I feel like I probably have like some kind of chronic thing with touch starvation. It's hard to explain it, but it's a physical feeling. I usually feel it in my chest. It's like it's kind of like I feel this weight and pressure in my chest, and it's just kind of, it's always just sort of nagging me and feeling really just like, it feels like my heart is being strangled a little bit. Like, it physically hurts. And I also feel like, I also just feel like this constant like yearning for like physical affection. Like, I just always feel this kind of like yearning for it. Sometimes I feel like the only way I can get my needs met. Sometimes like I just really wish that an angel would come down and just hold me, because sometimes it feels like no one else would, you know. And so yeah, so it's mostly in my chest. I feel this physical pain, and like I remember so clearly, it's like it just builds up and builds up, like this pain. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I like, to the point where it becomes a little bit agonizing. I remember there was one time I was on the train with a friend, and I was just so touch starved that I literally couldn't stand it anymore. So I asked her, I was like, "Hey, is it okay if I just sit next to you and rest my head on your shoulder?" And she was like, "Okay." And so I did, and I remember like the millisecond my head touched her shoulder, it was like such a big release of just pent up energy. It felt like so like, like finally, like this need is just like, it's like it almost is kind of like, you know, when you have like a pressure cooker, and there's a point when you're using the pressure cooker where you have to open this little hole in the lid, and all this steam just comes billowing out. That's a little bit what my heart felt like when I rested my head on my friend's shoulder. It was just like, shh. It was like this, like all this energy was just released, and I felt rejuvenated, and I felt relaxed, and I felt energized even. It was just like so relieving. And yeah, and you know, it's just like, it's just hard to explain to people how much it affects me, because most people hate being touched, and everybody has like a 30-mile radius where, you know, if you, they don't want anybody to be in their physical space. But for me, I'm like the complete opposite. I am weirdly comfortable with people being in my space. In fact, I'm very comfortable with pretty much anybody just being like just directly around my person. Like I'm very comfortable with people being in my space. And I don't know why, and I feel sometimes insecure about it, and it makes me feel kind of like I'm a weirdo, because, you know, most people aren't like that. At least not in America. You know, so yeah, it's just a thing. And I've tried going on, there's like this website where you can like connect with other people who are like seeking cuddle buddies. But to no avail, because nobody ever responds to anybody, or at least not to me. And yeah, and I mean, I've had cuddle buddies in the past. You know, I've had friends that that were like okay with, you know, hanging out with me and, you know, just like cuddling and stuff. But, you know, those people are in relationships now and stuff, and I can't really hang out with them anymore. So now I'm just back to square one a little bit. And see, the really frustrating thing is whenever, like, nobody talks about it. And whenever you go online and you seek out ways that you can kind of soothe touch starvation, like, by yourself, they're always just really, really useless answers. They're always something just really unhelpful. Like, oh, hug a stuffed animal, hug a pillow, get a weighted blanket, get your nails done, get a haircut, you know, like stuff like that. And, you know, I mean, I love my pets. I mean, my pets are at my parents' house because I moved out, but I love my pets, and they are helpful, but they can't replace, like, human touch, you know? And neither can most of the other things. You know, I mean, I do have a pillow, like a long pillow that I fall asleep holding onto almost every single night. And it's helpful-ish, and I mean, I definitely would rather have that than nothing. But it can't replace, it can never truly meet the need, and it can't replace being held by an actual person. Because, you know, a real person has warmth to them and weight to them, and they I don't know, there's a sense of being like when somebody's arms are wrapped around you, you know, there's a sense of safety there. And I don't know, it's so hard to explain to people, but, you know, yeah, it's just, you know, a lot of the things that are on the internet are not helpful. Also, because none of those things love me, except my pets. But like none of those things love me. Like my pillows don't love me, and I mean, you know, the person doing my hair definitely doesn't love me, because they're just a stranger. Um, though sometimes, I gotta be honest though, sometimes when I get my hair done, and they do like the thing where they massage your head while with the shampoo and stuff, that actually does feel really nice. That actually does help a lot. Especially at like sports clips where they put like the warm towel over your face. That actually is genuinely really nice. Honestly, I could just sit there for hours while they massage my head. And I could just fall asleep. But that, I don't know, is I don't, I mean, I can't do that like every day, I guess. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I take like a hot shower and that is soothing a little bit. But like I said, again, just nothing can replace a human person. So yeah. And I've like tried to see if there are like vaguely human-shaped pillows and stuff that I can kind of cuddle with. And there's not like a lot out there. And yeah, and I mean, I don't know. It's hard to fully describe the problem, but I hope that if anybody is listening to this and they get what I'm saying, I hope you understand. Because sometimes it's hard to find people who truly get what I mean. And it's also hard to ask people for hugs and stuff. Like, because, sometimes it's like, oh, well, if you ask a friend or a family member, they'll be happy to help you. And I mean, family members, sure, but sometimes, like, with friends and stuff, sometimes it's just, like, friendship enders for some reason when I ask for stuff like that. Because sometimes people will just get really uncomfortable with that notion, and then they just don't want to talk to me anymore. And it's like, well, alright then. Or at least, maybe not that they don't want to talk to me anymore, but it gets really awkward, and they feel uncomfortable around me. And then it's like, well, alright then. I mean, I don't have any, like, examples, because I don't really know if that's actually happened, but that's what it feels like. It feels like that has happened before. I also don't really have a very good memory, so I forget a lot of memories, but I always kind of remember the feeling of it. I always remember how certain things feel, but I can't always remember where I felt it, or why, or how. But yeah, I also just struggle with remembering things. A lot of times my memories get really distorted, and I find that, like, oftentimes the memory itself is way different than what actually happened, even though it feels like the memory I have is exactly what happened. So I feel like I sometimes can't trust myself, or my memories. But yeah, another thing is sometimes people like suggest, oh, like hug your parents, and I don't know why. It's hard to explain, but for some reason, like, that just doesn't help. For some reason, it's really hard to explain. I don't really fully understand why it doesn't help, but it just doesn't. Probably because they're my parents, and I see them every day, basically. I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard to explain. But a lot of times it needs to be from peers, or like friends. For some reason, family members, it doesn't really help a whole lot. I'm not really sure why. It's really hard to explain, but it needs to come from like friends and stuff, for whatever reason. I've also been struggling with dating a lot, for some reason. I've had recently a lot of experiences where, I'll, you know, so basically it started with, there was one time when one of my professors, told me that my assignment was to ask at least one girl out. And I won't really go into why. It's just, I don't know. This professor knows me fairly well at this point, and she just like wanted to challenge me for whatever reason, and so I did, and I've asked a few people out, and and it's funny just because most of them, I've just had really bad luck, because pretty much all of them have been taken, or would soon after be taken by someone. Like a lot of people would be like, "Oh, you're such a great guy," but dot dot dot. A lot of them were like, "Oh, but I have a boyfriend," and I'm like, "Okay, that's fine, whatever." But then I actually did. Someone did say yes. One of my friends said yes. But then, like a week later, so I got sick was the thing. But then, like a week later, when I got better, I was like, "Hey, sorry, I got sick. Are you still available?" And she was like, "Yeah, I actually got into a serious relationship." And I was like, "Well, all right then." And then there was one person that seemed really cool, and I wanted to talk to them for a while, and then I did. And then I asked them out after a few times of talking to them, and they were like, "I'm actually married," and that was like, ooh, yikes, and my heart just sank, and I was like, this is super awkward and uncomfortable, and I was like, well, bye, and then I, just like, I bailed from that situation. And I mean, it's not like I was great friends with this person. I only saw them. It was only a person that I saw on campus a few times, but I just never talked to them again. And then I kind of had somebody who actually asked me out, which was really exciting because it was the first time a girl has ever asked me out. But then they were like, "Oh, I'm not ready to go out with anybody because I'm getting over something." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." And then she got a boyfriend. And then after she got a boyfriend, like a week later, she texted me and she's like, "Hey, do you want to go on that date?" And I'm like, "I thought you had a boyfriend." And then she was like, "We broke up." And I was like, "Well, all right then. Sure, I guess." And then, but because I was asking her questions because I was confused. And I was like, "Okay, cool. Well, I'm not upset or anything. I'm just confused." And then she was like, "I don't want to go out with you anymore because you seem like a people pleaser, and that scares me." And I was like, "Make up your mind. Like, do you want to go out with me or not?" But I was like, "Okay, that's fine, whatever," and so. Yeah, so that ended that way. This is editing otaku. A part of the story I forgot to mention was that this person kept being like, "No, it's okay if you're upset." And I'm like, "But I'm not upset." And she'd be like, "No, no, no, it's okay. Like, you can be upset if you're upset." I'm like, "Why are you trying to force me to say that I'm upset? I just told you I'm not upset." And yeah, and so after oh, I don't want to go out with you because you seem like a people pleaser, I was like, okay, fine, whatever. She said, "I'm sure you'll make a great boyfriend one day." And I was like, thanks. But it's also kind of just like, you just met me, you don't know anything about me. So You know, it's like I'm not heartbroken over it or anything. It's just funny that you're like you don't want to hang out with me because of this thing you think that I am, even though you don't know me. I mean, I am a people pleaser to some extent, but I don't know. It's just funny. It's like even the person, even when girls ask me out, they don't want to go out with me. Well, I mean, I guess it's not that people don't want to go out with me. It's just that every single time, it's been somebody like who ended up being taken, I guess. But also it just feels like, I don't know. Sometimes it just feels like, cause you know, I've been trying lately to just get to know people and not go out the gate swinging, asking people out. Particularly because I had a friend who met a girl and talked to her for like 5 minutes, and then he was like, "You're gorgeous. Can I have your number?" And I was like, yikes, that's not a good strategy. And of course he got rejected, and that was kind of a healthy reminder of why I never got dates in high school. But, you know, and I obviously, you know, I don't ask people out like that. Especially not after only 5 minutes of talking to somebody. But yeah, I've been trying to just be friends with people first, and then if something naturally happens, then, you know, it happens. But then I've run into a problem where it feels like nobody wants to give me a chance to get to know them or get to know me. You know, because I'll meet people, and this is just like in general, by the way, not like specifically with girls, but just in general, I'll meet people, and then like sometimes they'll ask me for my contact or my Instagram or my number or something, and then they just like will never respond, and then they just don't want to talk to me, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. You know. And sometimes it feels like I want to be friends with people, but they don't want to hang out with me for whatever reason. Or whenever I talk to them, it's like they end the conversation really short. Or a lot of times I find that like a lot of people I've tried to talk to will just like walk away in the middle of the conversation, like while I'm talking, and it's like, okay, that's weird. Like, people like Gen Z, y'all are like, I mean, I'm one of them, but like, y'all are really bad at socializing. Like, a lot of people my age just do really weird, kind of rude things in the middle of conversations. Yeah, and you know, anyway. But yeah, so those are just some things that I wanted to talk about, and some things that I've felt, and things that I've been feeling. Because I wanted to talk about something more deeper, just because I got a comment on my last video that was like, more videos please about you know, thought-provoking topics. So I was like, sure, alright. So yeah, so those are some thoughts that I've had. I'm gonna try to figure it out. And, you know, I'll be fine. But I'm still gonna be lonely. But anyway, with that, I've run out of things to talk about, so I'm gonna end it here. But let me know if you have any similar experiences or thoughts in the comments, and leave a like. And subscribe to the channel, because I don't have a lot of subscribers, and I'm kind of really I'm really hoping that the channel will go somewhere, so, but you know to do all that stuff already, you hear it all the time, but yeah, with that, I am probably going to see y'all later, and stay weird, I guess.